What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a step back from the trucks and we're going to get some work done on the Jetta. So if you're not familiar, this is a 01 Jetta with a TDI and we got a big turbo for it. So XMan Turbo sent this over. Definitely go hit him up if you need a turbo for a TDI. I'll have his website linked down below. The best prices on these turbos. He does all sorts of different builds. He's got the regular GT turbos, the GTB turbos, anywhere from stock all the way up to like a 2260 or something. So what we got here is a GT1756. This is just a touch smaller than what is on my red truck. My red truck has the GT1856, so this is just a touch smaller, but in the car, it should feel like 100 more horsepower. So check this thing out. This is basically a hybrid turbo. So I think he takes a factory 15 and bores it all out, does the internals on it. The nice thing about this is it bolts on like factory. There's no pipe work needed. The intercooler pipe fits like factory. The intake fits like factory. The downpipe, everything fits like a stock turbo. So that's one of the best things about these turbos he does. You don't have to do a bunch of pipe work to get them to fit. So let's go check out the car. This already has one of his stage 1 turbos, which is basically a VNT 17. Not too big. It runs about 22 pounds. This new turbo should run somewhere around 28 and should put out quite a bit more power. Some of the other mods I have on the car, set of injectors, is a .230. I have an 11 millimeter injection pump. I got a lift pump, all the intercooler piping, the PD intake here, and the intake manifold. Actually the airbox too from a PD 150. So it's got some mods done to it. Nothing crazy really. It's just a daily driver. I just kind of want a little more power and see what this thing can do with the 1756. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm trying to film back here where the turbo is, way down underneath there. You're probably not going to see a whole lot. So I apologize. It's even hard for me to get down there and see what I'm doing, let alone get a camera in there. So I apologize in advance. So let's get this turbo ripped out. What we got to do, pretty obvious. Got to pull the intake manifold and the intake here, obviously the downpipe, oil lines, and all that good stuff. So really pretty simple. The only hard part is it's in the back of the motor, so you got to lean over the whole car and you can't really see what you're doing. So not a huge deal. I've done this a few times. It's pretty easy to do once you do it once. So let's get some stuff ripped out here, get this turbo out. Alright guys, there's the turbo. We got the intake off. There's just six 6mm Allen head bolts holding the intake manifold on. So now we got to get from the top side, we can get the oil line and most of the bolts on the downpipe. I think we got to get one from underneath. This oil line can be a major pain to get off. So there's the union, and you can't get a wrench on the union to hold it from spinning when you loosen the nut on the actual turbo line. So what you can do is get a flat blade screwdriver and kind of jam that in between the union and the turbo housing, and that usually holds it so you can loosen that nut up to get the line off. If you twist that line, it is junk. Buy a new one. Do not reuse a line if you twisted it or kinked it at all. You will burn up your new turbo. So let's get to work. Hopefully I can get the camera back here and show you guys kind of how it's done. But we'll get the downpipe and the turbo line off from the top. Then we'll have to jack the car up and get underneath. We'll get the return line off the turbo. There's the little mount bracket and then the lower intercooler pipe. Alright guys, I was underneath. I got the return line, the mount. I just pulled that one bolt right there for where the mount mounts onto the block. I pulled the heat shield off and then the lower intercooler pipe. So now all we got to do is take the 8 12mm nuts off, holding the turbo and the manifold, because it is one piece, holding that whole assembly to the block or to the head. So we'll get those off and we can pull the turbo out. Alright guys, I got the turbo out over on the bench. So if you guys are curious how long this took, it is 9:48. I started at 9 o'clock, so right about 45 minutes to get the turbo out. So actually very easy to do. I've done it many times, so I know every bolt, where it is and how it comes out and what to use to get it out. But not 45 minutes, not too bad. So what do we got to do to this new turbo? I got to take my fitting for my EGT gauge and drill and tap a hole in this housing for that gauge, and then we just got to swap over the return line onto the turbo, this little block off plate here, and that should really be about it. Then we can throw the new turbo on. I think what I'm going to do when I drill this hole, I can't remember what I did last time, but what I'm going to do is take my vacuum cleaner and I'm going to tape on some fuel line or something, stick it down in the port, and I should be able to get it pretty close to where I'm going to be drilling to. And I'm going to turn the vacuum on and have that on the whole time while I'm drilling. So any metal shavings will get sucked up in the turbo. And then I'm also going to kind of have it held up like this, just so gravity helps pull it down and not into the actual turbo. All right, I got this thing set up and you can see I got a mark right there. I just kind of matched where I had the other one in the other turbo. So we're going to drill that out. That is a 1/8 inch NPT fitting, so we got to drill it and tap it for that. And just be careful, these MPT threads are tapered, so you want to just tap a little bit at a time and then thread your fitting in, and you want to get the fitting most of the way threaded in. But if you go too deep, you won't be able to tighten the fitting up and you have to plug it off and redo it. So just be careful, go slow, just tap a little bit at a time and check it with the fitting. I've got the hole drilled. That is a 21/64. Now I have the tap, and this tap here, this is 8th 27 MET, like I said, and I have a 3/8 12-point socket that fits about perfect over that. So you're not going to be able to get the handle in here, obviously. You're not going to be able to turn it with the turbo in the way. I know you can get actually tap handles that work better than this, but that'll work in a pinch because that's all I have. So we're going to tap it. Like I said, just go slow and check with your fitting. There we go, that's about perfect. So it's all the way tightened down, and you can see it's pretty close to all the way in. We got full thread engagement, but it's pretty close to being bottomed out. But what you do not want to do is bottom that out, because it will not be tight and it'll leak and possibly work itself back out. So that's why you got to be careful when you're tapping these tapered style threads. Now what I'm going to do is run this magnet up through every port, because this is magnetic. So I'm going to run it up through every port and see if we can collect any shavings from inside that the vacuum missed. All right, we got everything swapped over. So when you get the new turbo, you don't get the union for the feed line, so you got to swap that. Got to swap, well, I put the plate there, return line, and the mount bracket to the block there. So we are ready to go back into the car. I already have my gasket on the head, so we're good to go there. We just got to drop the turbo in, bolt it up, put everything back on the turbo, and we can move on to tuning this thing. All right, guys, we are back together, looking good. So one thing we got to do before we start it is I want to pump some oil into the turbo so we don't start it on a dry turbo. They do oil them when you get them. There's definitely some oil inside, but I want to pump it full. So what we got to do, I'm going to disconnect the injection pump. That is the big plug-in right down here. And then I'm going to take out my lift pump relay because I do have a lift pump on here. So I want to disable that, disable the fuel pump and the lift pump, and then we can crank it. It really doesn't take that long to pump oil into the turbo, but I'll give it a few cranks just to make sure we got oil, then we can hook it back up and fire it up. There it is, guys. She's alive, running good. So let's bring it out for a little quick drive before we get the new map on. I haven't got it yet, so once we get the new map, I will load it on and we'll see what this thing can do. One thing you will have to do if you unplug that pump is you'll have to clear the codes. You can see all these fuel pump codes. So check engine light was flashing. We'll clear those, go back, done, and we are good to go. Well, she still runs. I don't feel a whole lot of difference in power yet, mainly because it is not tuned for this turbo at all. So once we get the tune in, we'll load that on and see what it does. All right, we got the map in for the car. I also got a 4-bar map that we got to throw in. So you're not gonna be able to see, it's up underneath the bumper. You can actually get to it if you pull that little cover off there. You see I already got the bolts out. So I'm gonna swap this sensor out and then we can load the map up and see what she does. All right, we're gonna load this file on. So we'll go write file to ECU. And we'll go stage 5, 28 PSI. Confirm. We got, turn the ignition on. Hit yes. And I'll probably get back to you when this is done. It's going to take a few minutes. We're done. Look at that. Now we need to see if this thing still runs. Don't mind the starter noise. I have taken that thing apart and cleaned it so many times. It just comes right back. So we'll get it warmed up and then we'll go for a rip. Make sure we don't have any check engine lights. I gotta load up a VCDS, make sure the timing and the IQ is still in spec, and we'll see what it does. All right, we're gonna do a quick boost log here. 3rd gear, starting about 1500 all the way to red line. Alright guys, she is a ripper on the first map they sent over, running super good, 28 PSI on the dot, so super happy with that. So as far as the turbo goes, anytime you go to a bigger turbo, you're gonna have a little more lag, which in this case really isn't that bad. There's not a whole lot more lag, but the thing pulls like a freight train up top, a lot more top end power, pulls through the whole RPM range so much better, and it feels quite a bit faster, so super stoked with that. Definitely go check out XMan turbos if you're in the market for a TDI turbo. Like I said, he does a ton of different turbos, so go check out his website. A lot of turbos he has doesn't even have on his website, so if you're looking for something specific, shoot him a message. You can also find him on Facebook at XMan Turbos. Well, that's a wrap guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.